Good evening, all. Looks like we do have a quorum, so I am going to turn the meeting over to our moderator.
Without objection, I'll accept the agenda. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of December 10, State of the Town. A second, please. Any additions, changes? Hear none. All those in favor, aye, please. Opposed? Abstentions? If you have abstentions, you can give them to our recording secretary here tonight after the meeting. We have 2 new members. Would you like to step forward?
They've been sworn. We have Karen McNichol in District 1, and in District 3, we have Catherine Kissing-Bailey. So welcome to our new members. That brings us up to 99. We were close. District 3 unfortunately had a resignation for a traveling member who wasn't able to make it often enough, so he did resign, which actually we appreciate. So we're hoping that District 3 will have someone else want to step up. So.
Another announcement, there will be a public hearing on Wednesday, February 6th at 8 p.m. right here. It's being held by the Public Works, Public Health and Safety, and Town Government and Structure and Administration committees of the RTM to discuss and afford the general public to be heard about an ordinance for the management of plastic and paper checkout bags in Darien. So Monica McNally will be running that. Monica, good luck. Public hearing is not a time of dialogue. It's a time of information collection. It's subject to Robert's Rules of Order. So that's just a reminder to everybody. Thank you. Now, item 19-1, consideration and action on Board of Education request for $355,000 for the update of the electrical wiring in 3 elementary schools. For the Education Committee, Clara Sartori.
Good evening. May I have a motion to accept the resolution? Okay. A second? Thank you. The RTM Education Committee met this evening, Monday, January 28th at 7 p.m. And we had, 12 of 15 members were present. The committee voted unanimously to support the Board of Ed's request for $355,000 to update electrical wiring in 3 elementary schools, Holmes, Hindley, and Royal. The committee was pleased with the depth of information provided both online and in person by the Board of Ed and administration. A little bit of background: the Board of Ed had concerns about the electrical capacity in the 3 buildings, and the panel will handle additional electrical needs. The goals were to create a better learning environment, to deal with the longer heat waves that are happening, and there were concerns about the effects on children, and parents have been approaching the Board of Ed about their concerns. The project will be done all at once so that the board can take advantage of economies of scale. There is no need to upgrade the electricity that comes from the street, but there are not enough electrical panels to distribute the load to the buildings. So that's why the addition is being made to them. Some wiring in some of the panels will be upgraded. The goal for the project is to be done by June when it gets hot again. Work will not be done while the children are in school. It will be done after hours and in April vacation. The air conditioning units are not part of the fee that we're approving tonight. The board wants you to know that they returned about $700,000 to the town this year for funds that they did not use, so that perhaps can be used to fund this project. Any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
For Finance and Budget, Jack Davis.
I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chairman of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. The committee met on Wednesday, January 24th, with 11 of 15 members constituting a quorum. I'll try not to cover what was covered before. As mentioned, these will be used because many of the panels are full or the existing slots just aren't available or working. It will not require increased power. Tokenique is not included because it has central air. Ox Ridge is going to have major construction, so it was not financially viable to do that. Equally as important, the Board of Ed believes that the addition of these panels will meet future electrical needs to the schools. So they did look out forward to say, are they going to need other things, so they're not coming back, or I would hope they're not coming back based upon their analysis, saying they need more panels. Not included in this appropriation is the cost of the new air conditioners. There already are 59 units in the 3 schools due to IEPs and other requirements. 46 new units will be purchased, and there's 3 types of different wattage for the 3 schools. And that's going to be paid out of the current Board of Ed school budget. We're not voting on that, but since somebody's going to ask that question, we thought we'd answer it. The approximate cost of the average cost for these units are about $800, so the total cost is going to be about $37,000. They're going to be managing some of their other equipment projects and other savings that they're going to generate to pay for this. We also had a conversation, and so we know what the incremental electrical cost is based upon running an 8-hour day, is approximately $105 per day, and that was calculated by knowing what the wattage is, knowing what it is times 8, and then going with what their rate is. They estimated that the maximum number of days that they would be running it would be about 67 days. Not that it's going to be run every one of those days, not that every classroom will have it on during those days, but as a maximum amount, we're anticipating that it will cost no more than $7,000 a year if, in fact, all of them were on for 8 hours, running for 67 days out of the school year, which is a lot, considering that they're not running on weekends. The committee voted 11 in favor and no opposed, no abstentions, and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you. Oh, one other thing I did want to add. Currently, they pay for electricians to rewire classrooms year to year because they have to move the air conditioners to follow a student sometimes due to an IEP. There will be savings that they did not calculate that is not part of this because they will not have to do that anymore. So it's out there. Just we didn't think that it was material or appropriate, but there is some savings associated with this. Thank you.
Any other committees wish to report? Okay. Members of the town boards? No? Okay. Members of the RTM, comments? Yes, Andrew? Oh, no, you can't. You got to come up. Just can't hear, Andy.
Andy Millar, District 4. What's an IEP, please?
Which?
IEP.
IEP, yes. Clara, would you?
Thank you for the question. An IEP is an individual education plan that is often that is always put together for a special ed student. And does that take care of it?
How many are there?
How many IEPs are there? I don't know.
621.
641 is the correct.
Other questions? Right. Yes.
Valley District 1, is that on?
You may adjust at your...
Is the 355 that's being appropriated, is that a number that has been bid on, or is that just a placeholder?
Jack, you want to?
The Board of Ed did a engineering study, and they got back the answers from an engineer of what it would cost to purchase the panels as well as install. So it is a reasonably solid number, not a back of an envelope.
Other members? Public electors? Ready to vote? Those in favor, please rise. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Next, we're going to have an election for the replacement of a person who resigned from the Board of Ethics. I was asked to give a little briefing on the Board of Ethics, and so I'll give you a little summary about what it is and a little bit about how it works. This is one-way conversation. We don't want to spend the night talking about this, but let me just give you an outline. The Board of Ethics is covered under Article 5 of the Darien Code of Ordinances under Code of Ethics. It establishes a Board of Ethics, and it provides the power and procedures to adopt reasonable rules and regulations. Has 5 members, 2-year overlapping terms, and no term limits. It is subject to minority representation, and in this instance where there are 5 members, a maximum of 4 can be of the same party. And that comes under Section 9-167A of the state statutes. It's not in the Code of Ordinances. There's some little things, little tricks in here that some of it's covered by state statute. Members are elected by the representative town meeting at the November annual meeting, and then replacements, as we are tonight, due to resignations and are done at the earliest possible moment after we receive the resignation. The board serves the entire town, selectmen, Board of Education, all the commissions. So we elect the people onto the Board of Ethics, but Board of Ethics covers the entire town. They work in executive session at the start when they're considering a complaint, and that's done to determine the validity of the complaint and to protect people. And that also comes under the Connecticut General Statutes as a method of operation for the Board of Ethics. It's interesting that if there is testimony, there's a stenographer present, and that the Board of Ethics has subpoena power. The Code of Ethics defines covered persons and information. It defines conflicts of interests, gifts and favors, and the focus is on persons seeking financial gain. The Board of Ethics is required to file an annual report as of June 30 to the Board of Selectmen and the representative town meeting. It is not a place where political questions are settled. Those issues are settled at the ballot box. They're settled in meetings under Robert's rules and resolved in that way. Tom Moore is the chair of the Board of Ethics. Tom? And so if any of you have any questions or want to ask anything, you can send it in writing to him, and I'm sure that he will respond and be helpful. So, without further ado, we have Donna, town clerk, has one nomination. Are there any other nominations? We have Jim Cameron has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Okay, can I have a second for Jim? That's great. All right, then it's unanimous. Thank you. The Rules Committee noted that there are a number of different projects that this body has been part of and approved spending for, and so the thought was that we ought to do a follow-up and find out what's happened to them. And Ed Gentile seems to have gotten the bulk of it. So we asked Ed if he'd come by tonight and review the items on this agenda and just tell us where they are and what's going on with them.
Can you just quickly announce the vote?
Okay, yes, the vote is 84 with 1 no. Thank you. So, please, then.
Good evening. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. Some of you, or most of you I know, but I hear some new members, so I want to introduce myself. I was afraid for a second Donna was actually adding to the list of projects that I was supposed to go over. And I will tell you, when it started, the first invitation was, can you come and do one project and give us an update? But more than happy to be in front of you and give you a very quick synopsis. Seth says I have 20 minutes. I do believe I'm going to try to do it less, just to give you the facts. And then maybe at the end, if you folks have any questions, feel free to ask them. My first project is we'll be talking about the town DPW garage project. I wouldn't start talking about this project without thanking quickly the building committee. That was fantastic. That kind of set the tone for the whole project, and it was key to moving this project along throughout the process. Liz Bacon, Martha Banks, Jim Bosick, Jennifer Hill, Kip Coons, Joe Pagliarulo, and John Zagrodsky, and I want to thank them personally. Throughout this whole process, we did look at different venues on how to bring in the construction after we'd finished the architectural work and design. So we did hire a CM, and we did use a guaranteed maximum price. I know currently we have some larger projects that are starting. There'll be some opportunities to use this process going through, but it's not for all the projects. Please understand, at about $3 million and above, a guaranteed maximum price is a good avenue to look at. Below that, there are costs that just don't balance out in lieu of using a general contractor. What it does allow you to do, though, is, and we found out as we went through the steps, we were able to produce a final budgetary number before we went to the boards, and that was key. The design was complete. The bids were in on all of the items, all the mechanicals, construction, site work, and everything. And with that number, we were able to come to you folks, the RTM, and get the budget approved for it. We also reduced the likelihood of doing any type of value engineering. As an engineer, I kind of dislike those words when you put the two together. It does take away from a fine project that you spent a lot of time designing. Our construction phase did take place in an occupied building and throughout a winter season, and I have to say it wasn't as easy as it sounds. But the guys were great. The residents were even better. I mean, we had a construction site for 11 months over there that looked at times like a bomb had hit it. But we got through it okay. Our original schedule when we did put it out to bid was 15 months. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer because of the phases, because of the use of the building. Our CM proposed in his bid that he would do it in 12. We actually turned it out in 11 months. Our budget for this that was approved through the RTM, total budget, was $6.545 million. Our final balance is just over $500,000 left. So if you're counting, we came in under time and under budget. Those are just great things to hear with any type of project, something that we all strive to do when we start a project out. Thank you. I appreciate that. The last three things I'd like to touch on is a quick lesson learned summary, if you will. We found out consistency with personnel from the design phase all the way through construction phase is critical. You learned all the key components at the beginning, you put them into your design, and it's great to have one or two individuals at the end while you're building it be there to answer the question, can we change this? Can we make a modification? And we found out having those questions answered very, very quickly were one of the main reasons that we came in a month early. Do your homework early. Eliminate all the unforeseen conditions that could possibly lead to a change order. I know it sounds silly. I know everybody hears it. I've heard it a million times in seminars. Certain projects, they are forgotten. Do your test pits. Check out your building. Look for asbestos. Look for unsuitable conditions for soil. Look for ledge. That's expensive, and it adds up very quickly. And finally, have a knowledgeable owner's rep and a strong building committee. And I can tell you from the people that, if you know the people that worked on this project, that is one of the main reasons that it turned out the way it did. I'm going to move on to my second project. I'm doing okay so far. West Avenue and Roten Avenue intersection. We did apply for lot SIP funding through WestCog back in March in 2016 for $1.2 million for construction costs and right-of-way costs. Came to the boards and the RTM for special appropriation for $160,000 of design fees and got approval in March of 2017. We hired Fuss & O'Neill, our consultant, in April of 2017 off an approved WestCog list. They had a 4 companies that you could choose from. We were using other companies already. This company had a great track record with intersections that I've worked on in the past, so we moved ahead with them. We did get a 30% completion design set of drawings. The cost estimate came in just under $1.2 million, so we're on target right now. At that point, you submit to the DOT for your review. They want to check your estimate against what you're designing and see that you're actually following their guidelines with handicap accessibility, traffic signal upgrades, anything like that. So what we ended up finding out, though, is we had, from the state level, a budget freeze. So when we submitted in August of 2017 our plans, we did not get a commitment to fund letter for over a year, November 13th of 2018. So it took over a year for us to get a commitment letter that they would fund this project. Excuse me. In January, we did sign an agreement with an appraisal company. We are going to use that company to help us determine the values of the easements that we'll need along this roadway to make it wider, to put in proper turning lanes. And just this past Thursday, we did have our first public information meeting. We invited the neighbors and the whole town, but the neighbors generally within 1,000 feet to come. We did have a really good turnout, I thought, for a project like this. And we were able to get some good questions from some of the property owners that were there, and some good suggestions about how to extend sidewalks. Maybe they wanted to see a little bit of furtherment, if you will, of the sidewalk and paths for pedestrians, and we're going to look at that, of course. We have a possible bid date of September 2019. That's if everything moves relatively smooth. I mean, we prepared for some bumps in the roads, but we're looking to bid it this coming September and get everything in order to start construction in April of 2020. My next one, let's talk about streetlights. We did a streetlights purchase in September of 2016, at which time, as soon as we closed, I signed the contract to immediately begin LED conversion. So we purchased the lights, and then we turned them over to LEDs. What we did now is we own capital, and then we actually reduced our energy use at the same time. It was a large capital investment. The LED conversion was completed in April of 2017, both phases. If you do remember, and if you don't, I'll remind you here, the purchase price was $155,000 to Eversource. Our LED retrofit cost to our vendor was $237,000. We got an Eversource rebate of $71,000. So adding the first two numbers and taking away the $71,000 will leave your balance that we're going to base our payback period on, if you will. The maintenance costs were estimated for a 20-year life to be about $10,000 a year. I'm finding it's a little bit higher. It's about $13,000. And the reason it's a little bit higher is we have to pay for any streetlights that are moved from an old pole to a new pole. And Eversource seems to be, the last couple of years, replacing a lot of their old poles. And they seem to be having a lot of our streetlights on them. So they cost about $450 to $500 each one. So as you see, they're doing about 4 or 5 a year. So from $10,000 to $1,250 or $12,500, that's pretty much where I'm running right now. I did a quick analysis on the payback, if you will. Our pre-purchase 6-year average from fiscal year 11 to 16 energy costs for our line item was $160,000. Our post-purchase, we have a 2-year average right now. I'm working on the third. Our electric costs are down to $83,000. So $77,000 worth of savings. And if you take that other number that I'm sorry didn't figure for you, I apologize. We are right around 4 years for a payback period. I think the analysis when we did it showed somewhere around 3.8 or 3.9. So we're pretty much on target for that one. Let's talk about solar. Our solar projects, we have 3 of them. We have one at the Darien Police Station. We started in October of this past year and completed in November. our average annual savings over a 20-year period for the system that's being placed there is about $7,200. We have one that is located at the DPW garage. We started it in November 2018 and completed it in December of 2018. They take about a month or so to put in and run the electric to it, we're finding out. The annual savings for that system over a 20-year period is $5,800 per year. We are just wrapping up the one at the town hall. We started it in January of this year. Hopefully, we'll be completed by February 1st. The average annual savings for that one here at the town hall is $10,750 over a 20-year period per year. So we're saving close to $24,000 a year over a 20-year period for these for the systems that are being placed out there. I will tell you, I've been asked when we're going to turn them on. The financing company, the Green Bank, if you will, as they're known, has required that we have all three systems in place and be ready to turn on before we turn them on. That was a little detail that I wasn't aware of. But to be honest with you, we're ready to go right now, and it didn't take long to be ready. So the 3-month period is not a bad thing. And once we start saving money there, this is going to be a great benefit and a great project for the town to do. Norotan Heights train station upgrades. This is a newer project. For those folks that are a little tired of the Norotan Heights platform project, I'm sure you were glad to see it was completed almost, except for the fine wooden railings that are out there. They did have it opened as they promised on Thanksgiving. There was a lot of begging and pleading on the contractor side of the state to allow them to do what they did out there, and I'm glad they kind of came to their senses and were able to open up all those platforms for you folks. But this project, we did put an RFP out in October of this past year, 2018, for what I would call a feasibility study, preliminary concept design for the Norotan Heights Rail Station and pedestrian overpass. Excuse me. In December of 2018, we did conduct interviews from a short list. And in January 2019, just recently, we have negotiated a contract with the selected firm of Gregg, Weiss, and Gardner Architects. They're out of New Haven. They have done quite a bit of work in the Metro North Rail, the New Haven line, and the Hartford line, most recently. And to be honest with you, it's hard to find an architect group that can do stations and have done overpasses. And I think that's critical to this project over there, that we don't just do one. We try to incorporate both, and we try to make it ADA compliant when we're completed. So that's what we're shooting for now. We're just starting our meetings. Our design budget right now for this project is $75,000. And we've gone and put an interesting group of stakeholders together, starting with our first selectman, who likes to be involved in these types of projects. Kate Bush, our town administrator, Jeremy Ginsberg, our P&Z director, myself. We do have someone from the DOT that's going to be involved right from the start. And we also have someone from Metro North that's going to play a key role in keeping us in line also. And finally, we do have someone that represents the commuters. He was honored here today by being selected, but Mr. Jim Cameron is on our stakeholders meeting and group also. So I want to thank him for participating in that. You have quite a few meetings to start going to, yeah. And finally, the Darien train station platform project. In July of 2018, the town was officially notified of an upcoming platform replacement project by the DOT at the Darien train station. It wasn't something that we all wanted to hear about, but I can tell you it's desperately needed. And maybe from the lessons learned from Norotan Heights, this project will be less intrusive and more efficient. In September of this past year, after we found out we were getting a platform replacement at the station, I had an opportunity to meet with DOT representatives to discuss a project that I had ongoing over there. We were currently working on the replacement of the town elevators at the Darien train station, And I'd like to apologize because currently, they're not back up and running yet. They were so beaten by the weather and the salt that we actually had to order new cars and new parts for it. The lead time on these items are quite significant. We will be meeting there in 2 weeks to kick off the final phase to get them back up and running. But an interesting conversation came out of this when we did meet with the DOT. They agreed to put in their platform project the replacement of the elevators. They are going to take them apart and put in hydraulics. They are right now cable elevators, not made for the outside. They don't weather well. They also are going to, as part of the platform project, build enclosures around those elevators to protect them from the elements. So this whole conversation came up. It took me by surprise. They were accommodating. They understand the issues that we're having out there. And I'm glad that actually we put together this meeting for them to come down and discuss it. Now, the new platforms will be made out of fiber reinforced polymer. They're not going to be concrete. They've tried this up on one of the stations on the Hartford line, from what I understand, and these will be heated, so we don't have to use salt on them. We will use salt on the approaches to them, but on the platforms themselves, they're made out of FRP, and they'll be heated. The tentative schedule for construction start date is 2022. I know that doesn't sound enticing, but it's a start. Since they haven't started the projects yet, as far as designs go, I'm waiting for the first meeting. I've been told I'll be involved with all the design meetings, as I was with Norotan Heights, to make sure that I do protect the interests of the town of Darien and their commuters and residents as we go forward. So, I think I did pretty good. I want to thank you folks for having me.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Well, Public Works is just another quiet place in paradise, right? Nothing much going on there. Well, we next have a briefing from Jill McCammon, Chair of the Darien High School Cafeteria Building Committee. We were, some of us were able to be there for the ribbon cutting, which was fun. And if you haven't, I don't know how, whether the general public kind of gets access to that, but that's someplace, the cafeteria is someplace. Anyway, Jill?
Thank you, Seth. We agree. Okay. Thank you for having us here tonight. Okay. So I'm Jill McCammon, the chair of the Darien High School Cafeteria Building Committee. The committee was made up of the 9 members of the Board of Education, many of whom are here tonight, as well as 1 member of the Board of Finance. And as Ed pointed out, this really couldn't have been done without the building committee. Everybody brought their own perspective and their own set of talents to the committee. Our charge was to expand and renovate the high school cafeteria, and I'm just here tonight to give you a brief update. I was given very strict instructions that it be brief, so I will be. Though some work remains, it is a good time for an update as the full space is open to the students. TV 79 taped a short 3-minute walkthrough tour of the space, so I'm going to show that to you now, thanks to Jim and to Cecil Wade, who did the taping. And I would like to give a profound thanks to TV 79 at this time for their constant presence at all of our meetings so that everybody could be kept abreast of what was going on. It's warming up. Okay. It's warming up. Okay. Fill it. All right. What you won't see in the video is the duct bank work. I'll show you the cafeteria in just a minute. But as most of you know, when we broke ground in April, we found a large, uneven duct bank that looked not like neat straight lines of utilities, but rather a large concrete bank that bowed into the space that we needed to expand. Despite time pressure and the constraints of working in a functioning school building, with a large incoming class, we put the project on hold, worked with the selectmen to increase our scope, and then with all of town government to secure the necessary funding to move the duck bank first. That work was completed over the summer, and then the cafeteria was completed throughout the summer and into the fall. You should know that the completion of the cafeteria and the utility work required a lot of hands to complete. In addition to the actual project team, thanks are due to you, the members of the RTM, as well as our fellow town boards, the selectmen, finance, planning and zoning, and employees of both of the town and school. Everybody had to come together to make this happen, and I hope you'll be really excited about what you see in a few minutes. Financially, the cafeteria expansion and renovation and the duck bank projects both remain on budget. Again, they're not completely finished, but we're very, very close to the finish line. Just a punch list to get through. The original appropriation for the cafeteria was $1.689 million, and for the duck bank was a transfer, or we got an appropriation of $262,000. Though we did not hit our original schedule, we were able to open the renovated cafeteria in time for the open of the school year with an increased seat count due to the acquisition of the faculty lounge, which again you'll see, and better space planning. The full expansion was opened at the end of the holiday break. All right, here we go. Hello, my name is Jill McCammon, and I'm here to welcome you to this video tour of the new expanded and renovated Darien High School cafeteria. We are so excited to show you some of the features in the space. There were 3 goals on this renovation. The first one was to expand the number of seats from 302 to 420. We did that by expanding out towards the football field over here and adding additional space past these columns. And we also did that by taking over the faculty lounge, or what was formerly the faculty lounge, to add seating area over there. We also did that by maximizing our space planning. The second goal of the cafeteria was to improve acoustics and lighting. To improve the acoustics in the space, which is maybe hard to tell from this video, but is significantly better than it used to be, there were 3 treatments. The first is what you see up in the ceilings. That is the most effective of the 3 treatments, or rather. The second is the actual panels along the back wall. Those are actually acoustical panels with the wave on them, and those help control the space moving between the hallway and this room. And the third are the panels that you see along the back wall here, the top of which says Blue Wave. Those are acoustical panels, also meant to help with rebounding sound. You'll also notice that there is variable lighting throughout the space. There are lights along the ceiling. There are lights in these cloud panels. There are lights over here on the columns and along the hallways. And there is lighting, of course, in the lounge area. All of the lighting does have variable settings to accommodate different light situations throughout the day. The third goal of the cafeteria was to create flexible space. The way that we did that was by setting up, firstly, multiple types of seating arrangements. You'll notice that there are banquettes. There are a lot of different kinds of tables. This is a table that could sit 2, 4, or all together. Right now is set up for 6. There are round tables. As you saw, there's lounge seating over in the back, appropriate for work and for lunch. And there's counter seating along the counters. When we say flexible seating, we don't just mean a lot of different chairs you can sit in. We meant different ways to use the space. The counters can be used for individual work, and of course can also be used for having lunch. The idea being that people could come and use the space throughout the day, not just during the lunch waves. And that even during the lunch waves, they could use the space in different ways. The second way that we increased flexibility was, again, making that maximum number of seats that we could get in here. The third way was to actually putting in the nano doors, which are a feature along the back wall here. Those are some large walls which enable this indoor and outdoor space to be used together. All of the furniture, as I mentioned before, is configurable. So this space over here can be set up for a large presentation. The lounge in the back can be used for a meeting, for a student working during the day, or for someone who simply wants to relax. So at the end of the day, the 3 goals were to have a bigger space, a more flexible space with great lighting and acoustics, It's also a beautiful space, and we really hope that the Darien students will continue to enjoy it as much as we have heard they have so far. Thank you so much. So we're really excited about that. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. That's okay. It was good.
Thank you, Jill. Great, Jill. Thank you very much. Last year, we had an address from the economic development chairs in both Norwalk and Stamford, and it was well received. And so we reached out again to see if they would do an encore, and they kindly agreed to come. So with the idea of ladies before gentlemen, I'll invite Jessica Casey, Chief of Economic and Community Development for the City of Norwalk, to come forward and tell us what's going on over there.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jessica Casey, and I'm the Chief of Economic and Community Development in the City of Norwalk. And full disclosure, today is officially my 16th day on the job. So thank you very much. You are the first group that I am speaking to about the City of Norwalk economic development, and go easy on me here, you know? I'll try to answer the questions, but in more cases than not, I'll probably take note of the questions and get back to you. So what I wanted to do was two things this evening. One is to tell you about the reorganization in the City of Norwalk, and the second is to talk a little bit about what I've observed over the last 16 days and tell you what I think is coming up next in Norwalk. So first and foremost, in October, the city approved a reorganization, and the reorganization was meant to achieve a couple of different things. One is really to bring a single point of contact for all economic development and community development driven initiatives in the city. And so working with planning and zoning, working with building and code enforcement, economic development and tourism, transportation, parking, and mobility, bringing all of those groups together and being able to work with the mayor on a vision for Norwalk, but more than anything, being able to support and assist those departments in being able to work together and making sure that businesses and private development and residents that are looking to come to Norwalk have a single point of contact to be able to work with. The second thing that reorg was meant to do, or is meant to do, is really bring together in a cohesive way, in a collaborative way, in a cooperative way, all of those departments working together and making sure that there's a single point of contact that threads all of those departments together, but also then looking at external stakeholders and thinking about how to work with the chamber and how to work with Norwalk Community College, how to work with the parking authority, how to work with all of the different groups that we have at the table and really being able to bring everyone together moving forward in the same direction. And I would say that one of the final things that I see in the reorg is really enhancing the use of data and analytics to make decisions in the City of Norwalk. So understanding what permits we have, what permits are being used, what people are looking for, streamlining permitting and licensing, and being able to use technology in a way that allows people to access City Hall in a different way. Thinking about how permits and licenses are actually, how people get those online, and then understanding the data behind the scenes on how, if someone was to apply for a permit or a zoning approval, how that information would travel from department to department in an electronic way instead of paper way. So a lot of change, but really thinking about how to support not only the departments, but also folks coming into Norwalk as well, and doing that in a way that brings all those departments together. The second reason why I said I was here tonight to talk to you, was to tell you about what I've seen in Norwalk to date and what I think is coming moving forward. And I came from Massachusetts. I worked in operations as a chief operating officer for policy oversight for rail and bus and subway. So the experience that I have is really taking a look at policy and how that policy is implemented, and not only implemented in the sense of thinking about how departments are using it, but also how residents are actually using those services as well. And so when I came to Norwalk, I really wanted to look at how the city was providing services, what that process looked like, and how we could make improvements moving forward. And what I saw was these 4 key takeaways, I think, in the way in which Norwalk is thinking about things. The first is plan. So planning, putting a plan in place, being strategic. And I think that you'll see that in Norwalk with the POCD. We're having a parking study that's being completed, and we also have the Wall Street redevelopment plan that's underway. But I think that what you end up seeing is a real geographic focus on where that development is happening. So whether it be South Norwalk or the East TOD, whether you see Merritt 7 or West Avenue, I think you're really seeing that specific focus in the neighborhoods, especially with the Wall Street plan underway. The second thing is really creating opportunity, and I think that Norwalk's done that in a number of ways. One example of that is the zoning reform. So there was zoning that looked at South Norwalk. It was passed just in April 2018, and 52 acres was actually zoned into one zoning type. And that one zoning type had very little special permit use requirements. And as a result, we've seen South Norwalk TOD come to fruition. We're seeing a lot of development down there as far as residential buildings. We've seen the mall come into play, and really just a totally revitalization of an area that folks have been working on for a long time. The third piece that I've seen is the investment piece, and the investment piece really comes in with stakeholders. And so how is City of Norwalk working with different stakeholders to bring investment in? With South Norwalk, we have CDBG funds, $30 million that came in to bring down a number of different debilitated housing that need a lot of work and be able to redevelop that area. But we've also seen Choice Neighborhoods come in as well and offer funding there. And then we've also seen infrastructure dollars at play. So we know the Walk Bridge program, revitalizing 5 different bridges. We know that that's going to have an economic impact in the sense of working with businesses on mitigation plans. But we also know that that's a safety requirement, and that for folks, 750,000 folks to be able to travel over those bridges every day, that they need to be safe, not only for the folks on the trains on the bridges, but also the folks that are driving underneath those bridges as well. And then lastly, I would say the marketing piece. So you've identified the geographic location, you've created tools, economic development tools to be able to spur that. You've invested in infrastructure dollars, and you've invested in the foundation for those. And then after that, we've marketing. So we've seen 3,500 residential units approved in Norwalk. We have more than 1 million square feet of Class A office space at Merritt 7, 700,000 square feet of retail in the mall that's going to be opening in October 2019. And I think that we've seen the way in which the City of Norwalk has marketed. So why am I here if Norwalk is doing all of these great things to begin with? I'm here to push it to the next level and encourage folks to get to the next level and be able to help business and private developers and residents access City Hall in a different way, thinking about the use of technology, thinking about how to really use that plan, that 4-step plan that I talked about, to be able to encourage additional growth. But not just additional growth in an unorganized way, really organized, being strategic, and thinking of the infrastructure we have at play. We know that public water and public sewer businesses can be dependent on that. We're not always able to allow growth in areas where there's not enough infrastructure. And so where are we utilizing infrastructure that we have? Where are we making improvements? How are we working with DPW and engineering to be able to get all of those improvements in play? So I see really great things for Norwalk. I'm really excited to be working with the city I'm excited to be speaking with you all today, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them away with me. And I'm sorry I don't have more specifics for you, but I did want to, I heard the meeting was happening tonight, and I really wanted to come in and be able to say a few words to you about the economic development in Norwalk, so thank you very much.
So, returning tonight for the City of Stamford, Tom Madden, who is Director of Economic Development.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
I'm not sure if this will play. You guys don't have Wi-Fi in here, do you? We do. You do? I was trying to pick it up. I want to show you guys. I got Frank's black phone. Is that you gonna let me that in, Frank? You know?
Don't be looking at that. It's called Town Hall.
Town Public. There we
That's
go.
it.
There
That's
we
it.
go.
You may need a password. It's Darien Town Hall.
Now, do you guys have a HDMI cable that I can hook up to?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Excellent.
I
Perfect.
think this will take a picture.
Sorry, what's the password?
Darien Town Hall. One word all over.
Excellent.
You take a traditional HDMI out, or do you take one of these little micro?
I can do either. I can do either or. So.
I'm sorry, I didn't make both of them.
Oh, no, not that one. I need a USB-C. So that one I can take. Perfect.
Please stand by.
This is why we were both in the audiovisual club in elementary school as kids, is so we can actually do this stuff and we don't have to bring anybody else in, so.
No fear, I see.
Well, that's it, you know, not afraid of technology, it's all good.
It's going to take a second to warm up.
All right. So, thank you Seth, for having me back again. I had a lot of fun here last time, because I think we had some great questions talking about transportation and a few other things. So for everybody, I'm Thomas Madden. I'm Director of Economic Development for the City of Stamford. As you can tell, Stamford is a little bit on a roll right now. So, you know, I talked about last year, we have roughly about $6 billion worth of development that is happening in Stamford. Probably close to another, almost, I would say, $300 million in infrastructure investments that are happening. So you may know about the new parking structure that will go next to the train station. Of course, the Stamford Urban Transit Way, which I call my Darien Expressway. So it gets you straight from Darien into our train station. All right, perfect. Come on. Duplicate, there we go.
Let's see. Source search. Let's try this.
Yes.
Sorry, this isn't working.
Do you have a different HDMI cable? I didn't bring one with me, so this one's sort of coming apart.
That's why it was there.
Maybe. All right, well, we can still talk a little bit about this. I'm in duplicate. All right, so we'll talk about it. So what I really wanted to do go through, and I sort of showed this a little bit last time, was the Choose Stamford website. And so that is our economic development website. We basically put everything up on there. If you pull out your mobile phone, it works very, very well on it. Basically, we have everything about Stamford and the surrounding area. What we've looked at, and it actually was used as part of a model for the new Choose CT Stamford, .gov, I believe, website for the state. And so what we started to do is really try to promote the area and the state in terms of economic development. When you go on our new website, which I'm sure you'll see, on your phone. We talk about Stanford, the whole live, work, play type of community that we have here. We talk about our incentives, but one of our really big things that we started to produce is just our research and data. The research and data is really, really important because, one, you can actually look up all the office space that we have available in Stanford, 25% right now. We have all of the current leases that we track, as well as we do our marketing research reports that the communities really like. What's interesting with our website and why we sort of put it out there is because we really are trying to build a foundation for information for a lot of the site selectors, a lot of the different companies that are out there, as well as the commercial real estate agents, the regular residential real estate agents, as well as HR managers. And so that way, if you're looking at trying to hire someone, you can say, well, hey, go take a look at Choose Stanford, or you can look at Discover Stanford, to really see and give a sense of what the community is. And so by putting this stuff together, we learned during the Amazon process, it was really important to have a very robust website. And we're proud to say that the last couple of sort of debriefings that consultants have done, they've actually featured Stanford as part of what you should have done as part of your Amazon application by putting a lot of that stuff together. So we were very, very proud of that. A couple of the other things that we've really been working on, again, I sort of alluded to it, is we've got a lot of transportation infrastructure. And we are trying to make Stanford a very walkable, pedestrian-friendly, as well as a bikeable city. When you look at the downtown, we've come a long way from 20-odd years ago where the shutters used to roll up at 5 o'clock and there was no one downtown except for the occasional prostitute that Bobby V used to chase around with his broomstick. Or some drug dealers down in Central Park, again, he'd chase around with his broomstick, to really we're turning into a 20-hour city. And that's a result of the huge amount or the large number of apartments. And so when we looked at the reason why we're turning to be so successful is, we took that growth plan back in 2002. We took a high growth plan and said, listen, we hear you North Stanford, we hear in the rural parts of Stanford, you don't want development. That's fine. We're going to put it all downtown, and that's what we've done. So when you look at the stats just in the downtown alone, I have roughly 2,000 apartments that have been approved, and I haven't even started construction yet. I have over 1,500 apartments that are under construction right now, just in our downtown. That's not including our south end. Our south end is scheduled to have 4,200 apartments. They've built almost close to 3,000 right now. And what's interesting with that is, there's a lot of outcry and talk about, well, we need more affordable housing. Well, these apartments are actually providing it because we require a 10% affordability portion for any new apartments going in. So all those apartments that are going into the south end, all 4,200 of them, we're actually going to see about 420 affordable units. Now, this is 420 new affordable units, not replacing housing. This is all being built on brownfield. And so we like to point that out as, the city of Stanford is really trying to do its part for the region in terms of building that affordability. The other thing that all those apartments are doing is it's helping us create a workforce. And so when we look at the number of people that are moving in, what's really interesting to see is it's a mix of millennials. And when I talk about millennials, it's kids that actually have gone to school in Fairfield, lived in the Fairfield County area, went off somewhere and are coming back home because they realize this is a great place to be. It is people that are moving into the area to work with the corporations because we have a lot of job opportunity. And also they're just tired of paying New York City prices. So they're coming up here because it's much, much cheaper. It's also retirees. We have a large number of people that have said, I'm just not ready to go down to Florida yet. I really like everything. I've got my doctor, I've got my dentist, I've got my church, I've got my friends here. I'm right next to the epicenter of anything arts and cultural, 50-minute train ride away. And so they're choosing to get out of the house, not mow the lawns or fix anything else, and basically saying, we want to have that apartment lifestyle. And I got to admit, I'm one of them. I got my house up in Stratford. I'm about to go rent out. I already took an apartment down in with my wife and son down in Stanford. I just cut out an hour-and-a-half commute every day, each way. So I've all of a sudden have all this time now in my hands, which means I'm in the office more often. But what we're seeing is just that change of that lifestyle. And this is coming from the west coast of Canada. We saw this actually 15, 20 years ago, is that sort of life cycling. So what's happening is you're getting the kids that are moving into the apartments, you're getting the people that are retiring, and what's happening is starting to switch. So the kids are going, hey, I want to have a family now, and I want to have that white picket fence, and so they're actually taking up a lot of the homes. And what's happening is that people are moving out of their homes going, I'm sick of doing paint in the garage and mowing grass every Sunday, and they're moving into the apartments. And so we're just starting to see that right now. The other thing we're noticing in sort of trends in a residential house in the area is, I have to thank President Trump for this, is that change in that tax law. So if you can only write off $10,000 in your property taxes, we're seeing a lot more Westchester people now moving into Connecticut, especially northern Stamford, because they're coming down from Bedford and everywhere else and saying, why do I need to pay $26,000 in taxes when I can pay $12,000? And I only lose $2,000 on my actual write-off. And so we're seeing a lot more of the people from the surrounding communities now looking at Connecticut as a very much a viable option for that. Our corporations, we have had a lot of people. You're going to see some really big announcements. One is the old UBS building. We've been working with a tenant on that one. That's going to take the rest of that building. So that, I'm hoping in the first quarter, should be able to make that announcement. We're pretty excited about that. And what's interesting is we've had some other big signings sort of coming around. We saw Bridgewater sort of move around in the downtown. The RBS building is actually 96% occupied. So, you know, even though we have a large percentage of vacancy, what it really equates down to is I've got 4.5, okay, I'll call it 5, I won't call it 4.5, but really 5 buildings that are taking about 1.3 million square feet out of our 16.5 million square feet of office space that are empty. So when you think of the Pitney Bowes building down on the waterfront, you think of the UBS building, 800 Long Ridge is part of the old GE headquarters, and 201 High Ridge, and then we got a little smattering up at the High Ridge Park. It's about 1.3 million square feet. So technically, when you take that out and you sort of, as you work your numbers, we're actually sitting at about 16, 17% vacancy. So, you know, the problem is these buildings that we have are very large and looking for a large tenant. There's just not a lot of large tenants, as they say, in the market anymore. These building owners really want to have that large tenant, and they don't want to break it up. So we've been working really hard with a lot of the property owners to fill that and trying to bring in some of the smaller guys. But, you know, we've looked at Stamford itself. It's time to adapt and reuse some of our older office parks that are away from the transportation center. So when we look at the High Ridge Road, you had an application for Lifetime Fitness, and the neighbors didn't like it, and they are basically, it's all in court right now. But what it was going to do was take about 100,000 square feet of office space off of our books. You know, it was a Frontier's old headquarters, and if it was such a great office space, Frontier would have stayed there. It was a crappy building. And unfortunately, we had some of the best architects in the world give Stamford their crappiest buildings. And they even admitted, I've got it quoted too. It's not me making this up. This is actually from some of the architects. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing. So, you know, Frontier, when they looked at that building right there, that 100,000 square feet, for them to actually make it a modern office building, not the 60s building, they were going to have to actually, they brought an architect in, they were actually going to have to tear it down back to the steel girders. That was the only way, because of the asbestos, the PCB, and everything else, that of course was in our 60s office buildings, to remediate it, to make it actually usable again. And so when it's going to cost you $35 million plus to rebuild a building, it makes much more sense to go and take a look at other places. And so they picked up in Norwalk, and, you know, I was really glad they stayed in Connecticut. So that was a big win for Norwalk, and we sort of, you know, were like, hey, this is awesome. Some of the other stuff that we've been working on is, you may have heard of the Fairfield 5. And the Fairfield 5 is Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk, Westport, and Fairfield. And these are the 5 chief elected officials that have all come together and said, how do we start marketing ourselves as a region? And 2, how do we actually work together? And so for the last year and a half, we've been having all these meetings and having our chief elected officials actually sit down and try to work out how we actually come together. And I said this last year, you know, As an economic development director and city planner, it makes absolutely no sense for any community to go and try to raid another community in Connecticut for a business. So I always equated it to, I'm never coming into Norwalk to take a business to bring to Stamford. That's about as much, makes as much sense as me walking in my backyard, seeing a picnic basket, grabbing a sandwich out of that picnic basket, and walking to my front yard and eating on the porch. Still in my yard. So how do I help Norwalk and everybody else retain those businesses and attract new businesses? So that was sort of the gist of the whole Fairfield 5. What's interesting is we've actually put on 2 events now down in New York City. We did one last April. We brought together all these site selectors and different companies, and we put on a nice lunch at the Marriott Marquis down in Times Square, and we had about 100 people there, sort of selling the area and talking to the site selectors and saying, hey, when you start thinking about the area, think of us. Our second one we did was in September, and Indeed.com, which has taken out a lot of space in Stamford, actually lent me their patio down in the old Hippodrome building. So we're on the 8th floor overlooking part of Times Square and around in that area down by Bryant Park. We actually brought in something a little bit different. So we said, well, okay, we did the site selectors, we did the big companies, but what about the little companies? We have a lot of startups, technology companies that are all around New York City. And since we can bring them up by our train, we can get them into some of our space, why don't we bring in a whole pile of capital companies? So we brought in Angel Capital, Seed Capital, First Series, VC, PE, everybody, and we brought in some IP law firms to talk about, why they should come up here. And our pitch really was to say, listen, it is much easier to be a big fish in a little pond as opposed to being a little fish in a really big pond called New York City. And if I can bring capital and get you capital quicker, why don't you come take a look at us up here? The other part of it was we were looking at our mentorship side of it. And so if we can bring mentors in to help these companies, which they're not getting in New York City, up here we get a bit more of a hands-on sort of pass them through type feeling, which they really, really liked. So we had about 15 companies come up, and we've given tours, and we've talked to them about coming into this area. Now what's interesting is with the Fairfield 5 and these companies, we realize that they're not going to, as much as I would love to see them locate in Fairfield and Westport, let's be honest, that's going to be part of where some of these people are going to live. You got great school systems in a lot of these places. That's where the houses are. But we have the office space in Stamford, and we've got a lot of the hedge funds and everything else in Stamford and Norwalk and the Greenwich area. And so we're sort of sharing our resources on how we attract these companies up here. And so we're just working on our next event right now. We're bringing people up. I believe we're going to bring them into Greenwich, go to the Delamar, have a little cocktail party, and basically have them come up by train and see how easy it is. What's interesting is Stamford's actually, and Greenwich, they're almost net inbound stations now. I know Stamford's a net inbound station. We have more people coming into Stamford from our train station than people going out. And so that's really, really important to us as we sort of build out that 20-hour city I was talking about. The other big thing we've been working on is our placemaking. And so when you look at Mill River Park and our events downtown, we really worked on a lot of stuff that interest all age groups. So when you look at Mill River Park, has anyone been to the skating rink there yet? A couple people, yeah. Big hit. And so the skating rink is actually built on top of our water fountain. So we have this beautiful water fountain that has, colored lights and music and everything else. You'll see that come up in May. But the skating rink has been a huge hit, just off the charts. We also have all of our development along the waterfront. And so when you look at Harbor Point, we're very, very proud of the work that BLT has been doing and other partners have been doing down there. It's really started to attract a lot of new companies. So ITV America, which took over our 860 Canal building, is bringing 450 new people in there, and they've actually took the whole building down to girders, same problems as what we had up at the High Ridge Park with the Frontier building. And they're rebuilding it out as a new studio with incubator accelerator. And we're talking with NBC Sports about this, or NBC Universal as well, because what they're looking for now is not just the guys, the video editors that can slice and dice stuff, but they're also looking for programmers. And so they want to set up, because they're doing a lot of online apps and websites. So how many people have kids in sports here? Yeah, pretty well, it's Darren, come on. A lot of it, so if you use Sports Engine to have all of your sport team put your scheduling on, that's an NBC product. And so they're investing in a lot of stuff to basically make it easier for parents to organize everything. And so we're looking at that, how do we actually start to bring those coders in? So the state actually has given out a $1.25 million grant to General Assembly. General Assembly is a coding school out of New York City, and they've got places all around the world. So we've been working with them over the last 2 weeks to find them space in Stanford to start putting on free coding classes. Now, these coding classes are about $15,000 for a 12-week course. It is free. If you have high school students that are recently graduated, or kids in college that can come back and grab this during the summertime, I highly recommend this, because this is one of those certificates that you really want to have. So we're looking at it really, that holistic approach of all the different aspects of finding and filling the needs for the companies that we have within Stanford. As I said, going back, it really sort of comes back to that development in the apartments and everything else that we have going on. So if Mayor Martin was standing in my place, he would talk about is a lot about the fact that, when you look at Stanford itself, we are, have one of the safest cities in New England for a city of our size. But it's the quality of life that is really attracting everybody to come into Stanford. The quality of life just keeps going up and up and up, and that is attracting more and more people to come in. And so you see a little bit of that in the headlines right now. We're having a little bit of a battle between the people that say, hey, we've got too much development that's happening, and we've got sort of the other people saying, we don't have enough. And as an economic development director, I can tell you now, when you look at all those apartments that we have gone in, and that's probably almost close to 8,000 apartments roughly over the last 10 years that have been built in Stanford. Anybody have a guess what our occupancy rate is on those apartments? 87%? 97. Close. We're 96. We cannot build these fast enough. On average, most apartment buildings are filling up anywhere from 20 to 25 units per month. And so a 200-unit building, it's 10 months, but actually it runs out because of wintertime, you don't lease as much. You're looking at about 12 to 14 months that these things actually lease up. And what's interesting is, as they've been being built, and almost a year and a half to 2 years later, they're actually being flipped and sold because they're completely full. We just found out one street where it had offices in it. They actually are converting them all to apartments now because there is such a huge demand for apartments. And what's interesting is the older stock of apartments within Stanford are still running anywhere from 94 to 96%. And what's interesting with that, because I check all of the rental numbers, is the fact that they're getting close to or at the same price as the new units. So, that sort of tells me supply and demand. We just don't have enough supply and to meet our demand. So that's a quick sort of nutshell on what we're working on. There's a few other things in terms of where the city is hoping to go. What was interesting is the Fairfield 5. We actually brought together all of our Fairfield legislators for the first time ever. And what was interesting is that's never been done before. And so we brought everybody who's in the Senate and the legislature to actually talk about Fairfield and say, we need more representation. And by that I mean, talk to us and come together as a caucus or a group to start pushing some of our issues. So, one thing Stanford's talked about is we've got a mold problem. We just had the perfect storm last summer. And, I'm being a little cheeky on that one, but it was just the right conditions at the right time with all the humidity and the rain and the kids being just out of school at the right time to shut down part of the systems. And, it's going across a lot of the lower Fairfield cities. We're asking for help, talking in Greenwich needs help as well. And what's interesting talking with Mayor Tessie is Greenwich, what most people don't realize, has 20% free and reduced lunch. Everybody thinks Greenwich is really, really rich. I'm like, it's not. A lot of these cities down here have a lot of the same problems, but because we're sort of isolated from Hartford, they sort of think, well, you guys are the rich people. No, it's not true. We have a lot of the same problems that Bridgeport has, and New Haven has, and Waterbury has, and Hartford has. And so it's really getting people, and especially at our legislature, to fight for us down here and say, listen, that's just not the case, and have proper education on a lot of things that we're working on. The other thing we've talked about at the Fairfield 5 is just the fact we have 3 MPOs going from Greenwich up to New Haven. When you think of New York City, they have one, NIMTEC, New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, and that covers Long Island, Manhattan, Westchester, Rockland, and the MTA stuff. Did I get that right? So I used to work with them quite a bit. And so what we have is, in a much smaller area, we have 3 metropolitan planning organizations that are dividing up federal money for our transportation projects, as opposed to something that actually makes sense along the I-95 corridor with the train and the highway. So again, we're looking at going, how do we start to solve some of these problems together and sort of say, to have a better plan for the area. I'm going to finish with just a couple of unique projects that we're working on in Stamford. And these are sort of our cutting edge projects. One, we've been working on our gig Wi-Fi downtown. So the mayor would like a ubiquitous system of free public gigabit Wi-Fi in the downtown. We were just testing it tonight. I think we're getting almost a 400 megabyte download, which is pretty good. We're working with Frontier as part of our innovation district and its project. And the other big one we're working on is our autonomous vehicle zone. With the government shutdown, we haven't heard back on our grant yet. We are hoping, and our lobbyist said it sounds pretty good. We're working with both ConDOT and UConn on an $11 million grant where we would bring in autonomous shuttles. And so how do cities start to adapt to autonomous vehicles? Most people don't realize how close we are to having these things start to move. And the cities that are preparing for this are the cities that are going to move forward, because those are the ones that are going to attract the tech companies and the people to move in. So our plan is by 2020, which is shorter than the 2022, I think, on the other one that you guys had for the train, is to actually have micro shuttles working in our downtown on a 1.6 mile loop in the downtown, starting at the train station, going up Washington Boulevard, down Tresser, down Canal, and back down North State Street. So it's all easy right-hand turns, okay? The idea with this is we would have and try to solve part of our shuttle problem that we have at the Stamford Transportation Center. We have 68 shuttles running there right now. If you've been there and seen the shuttles, it clogs up a lot of traffic. With the closure of Atlantic Street Bridge, it's going to be even worse for the next 18 months. So we're trying to figure out how we actually solve some of these issues. So the idea is by 2020, we bring in some of these shuttles and help do a public-private partnership where it runs on that 1.6 mile loop. Now the idea is our first deployment would actually be a static deployment where the shuttle just sort of runs, stops in front of a building, doors open, you get on and off, and it keeps going. There's of course a person in there because our legislation requires a person to be in there. But after that, our second deployment was actually dynamic. And so through use of an app on your phone, you actually get to book a seat on there. And so the shuttle itself, as soon as it is full and picks up its last passenger, it goes straight to the train station. At the same time, the next shuttle's now understanding that, oh, hang on a second, I've got more people down the line, and it's where I have to sort of speed along to get to my next people and get them to the train station. The idea is to pull all of that together as part of the API and the times of the train coming out of the train station so we can start to match up the shuttle run with getting to your train on time. And so we look at this is going to be really unique and a problem that has to be solved as part of this. The other part of it is we have some cybersecurity companies. And so while everybody is sort of talking and trying to figure out how we actually use autonomous vehicles, Where we're trying to position Stanford is on the cybersecurity side of things. And so we have cybersecurity companies that are looking to jump up and say, okay, how do I make sure that these vehicles don't get hacked that are driving the public? And so it's very, very important. And, you know, I look at it, I think, you know, with Connecticut as a very unique military industrial complex that we already have here. And I've said this before, we actually, what most people don't realize is Connecticut builds the world's largest autonomous vehicles already. It's just the fact they all drive underneath the water. How come we're not taking that technology and applying it to our streets? And so we've been reaching out to Electric Boat and to Sikorsky and Pratt Whitney and everybody else and saying, listen, we think you've got something very interesting here that has technology that you can then transfer into everyday life. And so we're hoping that as part of a next grant we're actually going to apply for that cybersecurity is to help solve some of those problems, and we get some of those larger corporations to start giving us some of those skunk work teams to help develop solutions to a lot of these problems. In return, what we're hoping to is, again, develop more technology companies, and we have our schools handing out more technology degrees and allowing our kids to stay here and work on that technology, as opposed to going down to Virginia or South Carolina or Texas, Florida. So the idea then is to be able to at least retain everybody here. So that's just a couple things we're working on. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Oh, you guys are letting me off easy. I think I had 3 questions last time, so that's perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom, very much. I will accept a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor, rise, please.